Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the Beretta CX4 9mm rifle. This is a rifle that I have done lots of videos on in the past. Like, you gotta go back like about 2 years into my channel. Basically, if you do a search with my channel name, right, channel name from above, and do Beretta CX4 rifle, you're gonna see my old videos on this. There was a time when this was like my main 9mm rifle. Okay, this is a gun that I used to train. I used to train lots of people on this, and I stopped. Okay, I stopped in favor of the Palmetto PX-9s. So in this video, what I'm doing is I'm coming back to this rifle after about 2 years, and kind of looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. So to some extent, I am a little biased because I did already move away from it, but I'm kind of coming back to it now. And immediately, I can tell you there's something that I really miss about this rifle. Let me put my ears on, and I'll tell you what, what I miss. Put the magazine in. Last round, bolt hold open. Okay, so this rifle has a last round bolt hold open, which is not present on any of my Palmetto PX-9. Okay, that is something that I do miss dearly, and I understand why Palmetto doesn't have it, right? Basically, this gun here was designed to be a 9mm rifle, right? From the ground up, they were designing this to be a 9mm rifle, whereas this gun over here, okay, was basically what they were trying to do is they were trying to copy the AR-15 design and bring it over to a 9mm cartridge. Okay, so they approached it from a totally different direction. With this gun over here, they said, okay, we want a 9mm rifle. How are we going to design it? So they designed it in such a way that that it would work. Okay, so that's the first thing I miss about this gun: the fact that it has a last round bolt hold open, because it was designed from the ground up to shoot 9mm. They weren't just trying to modify a design from a different cartridge over to this. Now, the other thing that makes a lot of sense about this rifle is that the magazine goes into the handle, right? Which is pretty typical with pistols, right? So on any pistol, any modern day pistol, the magazine goes into the handle, okay? Which is extremely efficient, because if you're gonna have something that sticks down from the gun, right, like the grip, because you gotta have a place to grip this. So if you've got something that sticks down already, it makes sense to have the magazine go into that thing, the grip, as opposed to this design over here, where you've got this thing over here that really only serves one purpose: to hold your for you to put your hand on, and then you have a different spot up here where the magazine goes in. Okay, now here's the thing: between comparing these two guns, with this gun over here, the barrel comes all the way back, behind the trigger, in line with the grip, right? Because what happens is the magazine feeds into the grip, and the bullets, when they're stripped off of the magazine, feed directly into the barrel, so the barrel is in line with the grip. Versus with this design over here, right, where the magazine's way up over here, so now your bullets are basically feeding into your barrel, which starts over here. So one of the major differences here is, on this gun, you've got this extra space from here to here. You're basically adding 6 inches to the gun in this area over here. That doesn't need to be there, right? The only reason why it's there is because they were specifically copying the AR-15 design. Okay? That's the only reason why it's there. They could have just as well designed this gun to remove this area over here, have this magazine go into the grip, and it would work in a similar way. But then it wouldn't be like an AR-15 design. It'd be like a completely different design. It basically would be that thing over there. Okay. So the goal of this design is to copy the AR-15. Okay, the goal of this design was to build a good 9mm rifle. Okay, so be aware that that's a significant difference. If I had never shot an AR-15 that shoots 5.56, right? Never seen one, and then you put these two guns side by side on the table, and you said, okay, which gun do you think would you prefer? I mean, engineering wise, I would be like, give me this one, because why do I need all this? Why do I need the 6 inches in here, right? Why is this extra space there? Doesn't seem to serve any useful purpose. So what that does is it does make the gun more compact, because if you hold these two guns side by side, right, obviously you can see how the AR is longer. Even if I fully collapse the stock, right, the AR is still longer. Okay. Now part of that is the bird cage, but here's the thing though: with this stock fully collapsed, this is now really uncomfortable. Like I need to have this here in order for this to be comfortable, which is now the same as this, because the grips now on this are pretty much the same. So having a fully extended stock, now obviously this stock is not adjustable, but having a fully extended stock basically puts my hands, puts everything in the same position over here, okay? So as I hold these two guns here, where basically the grip is more or less in the same spot, you can see how there's a little bit of a difference. The AR is naturally longer. Now the other thing that this does is, this is a lighter gun because of all that. Now a part of that is you got 6 inches less space in here. The other thing is this gun's got a whole lot more plastic on it. Let's put this on the scale. Okay, so this comes in at 5 pounds, 14 ounces. Okay, no magazine, just the optic basically. So this is the same weight. And this is a heavier, slightly bigger optic, but it's gonna make that much of a difference. So 5 pounds, 14 ounces versus 7 pounds. Okay, so this one weighs more than a pound. Okay, and a lot of that is going to have to do with the fact that you got aluminum on this versus plastic. Now, if you went to an older design that had plastic, it would probably come in a lot lighter. Okay, but however, this is a lot. You know, the aluminum on this with the M-LOK rails does serve a very useful purpose. Okay, now if you go back and you find one of my older videos, one of my complaints was that I didn't have a good place to put a light on this gun, and that's because at the time I had not found this rail that shipped with the gun. And part of the reason why I'm doing this today is because I found the rail that goes on this gun and I installed it, and I'm like, okay, great, I got the rail on there, let's shoot the gun. So now I have a place to put a light on this gun. However, they only give you one place, they only give you one rail. They didn't give me a rail on this side. So now we're gonna get into some of the things I don't like about this gun. Okay, so as far as putting a sling on this gun, the options that they give you is they give you these whatever you call these things, these swivels over here, that is just not conducive to modern day tactical fighting. Okay, what I need is a QD point here and a QD point here, so that I can basically sling this on and the gun can rest up against my body. That's what I need. If I put a sling on at these 2 points over here, the gun's going to want to sit like this instead of flat against my body. So that's the first issue. Now, can we get around that? Yeah, there's ways we can get around it. I mean, they do give you an older style loop, whatever, but I don't know what you want to call it. That's where you could put an older style sling through that. But on the front, here's the thing: I would have to get another rail to put on this side, where I could mount, a QD point on that, and then maybe go to this over here. So those are my options. So now, obviously, this is from an earlier generation. Now, AR-15s were common at the time, but the thing is that you know, this thing is more than 10 years old at this point. At that point, I mean, I don't know if AR-15s were like the dominant rifle. Okay, so at that point, that's not what they were going for. They were not so much setting this rifle up to compete with an AR-15. Although they had started moving in that direction, because you can see that they have a rail here on the top to take an optic. Now, as far as the rail on this, okay, one of the things I don't like about this gun is that the rail basically screws into the plastic. So there's 3 screw points. There's one here, and there's one over here where this optic is now sitting on top of it. So one of the things that I found this a couple of years back, that, you know, even with Loctite, if you shoot enough rounds with it, these screws are going to start to come loose, and you just got to remember to tighten that up. So this rail is not part of the it's not part of the upper, the same way you know, this rail over here is part of the upper. Okay, so when you put the optic on this, it's pretty much connected almost directly to the barrel, because the barrel's basically you know, connected to this, so the two are kind of attached to each other. Whereas that's not the case with this. You know, this rail that you see here is screwed on to the plastic, and that's something that over, you know, 1,000 rounds or so, it can shake loose a little bit more easy. So that's one of my issues with this design, and it wasn't even something I initially thought of. It's just something that I came to realize as I was shooting this, and I saw that the screws started coming loose, and I'm like, oh shit. And at the time, I wasn't like even so much aware that how that was such a much better design. But again, this was not designed to compete with an AR-15. They started from the ground up. You know, let's build a 9mm rifle. They probably intended for most people to shoot this with the iron sights. Now the iron sights are fixed, but they do fold down, right? So that's probably what they had in mind when they built this gun. Now I bought it 10 years ago. The design was probably out a couple of years before that. So what I do is I got the scope on here. I got these iron sights flipped down and out of the way, right? So they're flipped here. Let me get behind the camera so you guys can see it. So you can see how they're. Let me make this a little bit brighter, because I was shooting this before at distance, so I had to power it down. So let's see if we can get there's a dot. So you can see how they kind of flip down and out of the way. Now on this one over here, I chose to put this is the optic is the Holosun 403C. So the 400 series is dot only. So here's one of the things I'm going to tell you guys. The reason why I got dot only is because of all this extra stuff that's on here, and I said, you know what, I thought the 65 MOA circle with the dot, there might be just too much stuff going on. That was a mistake. Don't buy any optics for a rifle unless they have the 65 MOA circle. So that's the reason why I got the 403C. But if you buy it, get the 507 that has a 65 MOA circle. Because here's the thing. When I shoot, I did a video where a couple of days ago I was at a 300-yard range, and I was shooting a 9mm AR at 300 yards. Okay, so with the 65 MOA circle, I was able to anchor the bottom of that 65 MOA circle to my target, to the top of my target, and I was able to get hits on target. So the 65 MOA circle is useful for an elevation adjustment at 300 yards. Without that, with this gun over here, I would like to take this to a 300-yard range, but I have no way to anchor to judge my elevation, because all I have is a dot, and I just gotta kind of guess what my holdover should be. So do not buy any optics that are dot only. Okay, get the 65 MOA circle. That's going to be very useful, especially on a 9mm rifle if you're going to be shooting it at 300 yards. Now, the other issue that I have with as far as the rail and optics, there's really no way I can put a magnifier behind this. Okay, I mean, I can move this up a little bit. The problem is that in order for me to get a co-witness here, I had to use the low rail. Okay, and that's pretty much the height that I have to use in order to put this on the normal position on my face. Because in order for me to use the magnifier, which sits higher, right, I would have to remove this low rail from here, move this up. I'd have to put a standard height so that the optic comes a lot higher. And now the problem is, I mean, yeah, now I can match it up to a magnifier, right? But the problem is that because now this has a riser on it, instead of putting my cheek on it, I pretty much have to put my jaw on it. So that's going to create other issues. So that's another problem that you might run into with this. I really didn't care to go through the trouble of trying to put a riser on this in order to put a magnifier behind it, so I just shot it the way it is. If I didn't have this available to me, I have lots of these available to me, because this is really easy. You know, I could just take the magnifier. Let me see, am I open? Yeah. Throw this on there. Close this, and now I'm ready to shoot 300 yards with this rifle. Okay, there's the 9mm. So this, and I can flip this out of the way. This is set up for a lefty. It just flips over to that side. So I can, you know, if I want to shoot distance, I can shoot like that. Flip this over. Okay, and if I decide that I don't want this, I can easily remove this. Okay, so having a magnifier option is extremely useful. Now, one of the things I did take this out to 100 yards to shoot it. And I know in the past, because I looked up some of my old videos, with that rifle, I have shot 5 inches at 150 yards, okay? And I remember I have shot basically 3 to 4 inches with this. So the rifle's good for 3 to 4 inches. The problem is that because I can't put the magnifier on it, it's really hard for me to be consistent, because when I put my dot on this, right, when I put my dot here, basically, I really can't see the bullseye, right, at 100 yards. So I'm basically centering to the center of the target, right? So my dot is like this, and it's a little hard to be like, you know, centered. You know, you might be a little bit off. So that's one of the difficulties that I have shooting at distance without a magnifier. Now, I took a couple of shots here. Ignore the squares. That's from a previous group. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. All right, so I got a 6.5 inch group, but that one I'm going to call that a flyer, where I was just anchored wrong. So I got basically a four shot group. Okay, that one I basically, instead of putting it here, I probably put it a little bit here. Really hard, you know, to center this without a magnifier. So this rifle is going to shoot 3 to 4 inches at 100 yards. With the magnifier, I'll probably get inside of 3 inches. Okay, so the accuracy is there. It's an accurate rifle. The problem is figuring out the optics. You know, because like I said, if this needs, you know, this really needs the optic to sit low so that it will be in the normal position on your face. Problem is, if this is sitting low, it's hard to set up a magnifier it's hard to find a magnifier that's going to sit in that position, because the magnifiers are really designed to go on AR-15s, right? So even if, because this one does have a riser in there, but even if I remove the riser, it's still not going to line up, because I pretty much have to get it down to this level right here. So if you see how the base has to come like way low. So basically, it's not just a matter of removing that one riser in there. I got to remove this entire thing over here, the entire bottom plate, in order for this to line up. So the only way to make this work with the magnifier is I have to remove this, and I have to put a standard riser on this to, you know, in which case this is going to sit on my jaw, and now I can get the magnifier on there. And I'm not planning to shoot this gun that often, so I'm just not going to do it. Okay. So that's the issue with this gun. It's really not set up to work with a magnifier, you know, because that's really not what they would do when they designed this gun. That's not the thing they were doing back then. Okay, they were primarily shooting iron sights. That's what this gun was designed for. And the rail here is really an afterthought. You know, they basically just screwed it on there. But you know, the gun wasn't so much intended to be shot with an optic, even though they were starting to catch on and be popular. Again, same thing over here with the light rail over here. They only send you one. They don't send you one, because I would like to have a light on one side and maybe mount a sling on the other side instead of down here on this little piece of crap that's over here. Now there is a little thing here that's supposed to come out, and I've never been. For me, I guess it's stuck. I've never been. There is another rail that comes out, that slides out. I've never been able to get that out. I didn't want to mess with it too much. Now, as far as the design of this gun, it does separate into a lower and an upper. There's a wedge over here. So what you do is you pull this back. And by the way, this has a side charging handle that is reversible. You can move the side charging handle to the other side. Okay, so when you move the side channel, so basically you got to pull this back to pull the hammer back, because there's a hammer, there is an internal hammer, and there's a wedge over here, right? So I'm going to push this wedge out. So obviously this doesn't come apart just quite as easy as an AR. So, and then basically, there we go. And then it separates into an upper and a lower. Now, looking at this design, one of the things that I see, like when you look on this part over here where the wedge goes, there's a lot of hollow space in there. Okay, there's a lot of hollow space in there. So you know that's you know, so the hold on, let's put this back together. Okay. So the space that you gain by moving the barrel all the way back to the grip area, right behind the trigger, you do lose some of that efficiently as far as the thickness of this, because this up here is unnecessarily thick, right? The way I'm grabbing this compared to this rail is a lot thinner, so it's a lot easier to grab. Okay, so this is a lot easier to hold. And again, you could put rails anywhere you want on this. That's not something that you can do with this gun, because that just wasn't a thing at the time when they designed this gun, right? And here's the thing, because this sits lower, if I take my typical C-clamp or I put my thumb over the top, now I see my thumb, so I pretty much have to hold it like that. Okay. So again, this is a design, I guess, from an earlier period. Not from an earlier period, I mean, because ARs and this did coexist when they were designed, but the tactics, the fighting tactics that have developed around the AR-15 did not go into that design. I think they were like purely looking into, let's make the most efficient 9mm AR. Okay? So the way I came about buying this is first I had bought a Marlin in 9mm. It was used. Okay, it was a used Marlin, and I started training some people on it. This is like early on. I'm going like 12 years back when I first became an instructor. Okay, and the 9mm was cheaper. I started training people on that, and I saw that people were really liking that. The thing with this Marlin, it's like it broke within like 200 or 300 rounds. Something broke inside it, and that had been discontinued. Okay, so I took it to the gun shop where I bought it, and they couldn't get parts for it. So they ended up taking that back. I bought some other gun, and then I looked around. And I saw that a Swami. Okay, so it was a 9mm Swami. I ordered that. I think it was from Classic Firearms. That ended up being an extremely heavy gun. Okay, that also brand new now. That broke within like 300 rounds. Okay, I think on that gun I kept breaking the firing pin. I think. The problem with the Swami 9mm, aside from the fact that it was like stupid heavy, that gun was originally designed to shoot from an open bolt. And it had, you know, that was the original design, and then they kind of redesigned it so that it would shoot from a closed bolt. And the reason why they do that is because open bolt rifles are really easy to convert to full autos. Okay, so that's why they redesigned that so that it would shoot from a closed bolt like this one over here. So with an open bolt, when you charge it, the bolt remains open like that, right? And when you press trigger, it just releases it. You know, so and basically the bolt is usually the bolt has a fixed firing pin that just hangs forward, and it just continually slam fires the gun until you take your finger off the trigger. And by taking your finger off the trigger, it basically blocks the bolt. Okay, so when you squeeze the bolt, it removes the block, and the gun will continually fire. Okay, so since the Swami was designed to shoot from an open bolt, when they redesigned it with a firing pin to shoot from a closed bolt, it turned out to be a really crappy design, and I kept breaking the firing pins, and the firing pins weren't easy to change on that gun. So I sold that. I got rid of that, and then I started looking around. Now I'm pretty sure that 9mm ARs existed at the time, although I don't remember looking at any. But because I had such a bad experience with 9mm rifles, I said, let's take a look at Beretta. I looked at Beretta, I looked at Glock, because I'm thinking, okay, these guys are like 9mm experts, right? Glock didn't have anything. I saw that Beretta did have it, and I'm thinking to myself that, hey, these guys, they have probably figured out a way to make this gun work, to make it work and make it work well. And I was right, they had. So that's why I ended up going to this first, okay? And I worked with this for a couple of years, right? And then what happened, I probably worked with this for about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. And then 2020 happened, and then I started getting really busy with people wanting gun training. And I started running a lot of rounds through this at a rate that I had not done before. And that's when I started seeing like the rails coming loose and stuff like that. And then I also had a case of a bolt bounce. Now at the time, I didn't know what happened. I wasn't aware of the concept of a bolt bounce. But what that happens is, this is a straight blowback, right? So it doesn't lock or anything. So with the bolt bounces, the bolt comes back, it closes, but sometimes the bolt can bounce, and then when you pull the trigger, you get an out of battery discharge. Okay, it doesn't happen often, but it can happen if you shoot like as many rounds as me. At the time, I was doing probably something like 2,000 to 4,000 rounds a week. Okay, just going around different gun ranges, training people. If you do that high level of volume with the blowbacks, you're gonna get a bolt bounce. Okay, it's just inherent in the design. Okay, it doesn't happen often, but if you're doing like 2,000 to 4,000 rounds a week, you're gonna get a bolt bounce. So what happened is it had an out of battery discharge that it sounds like when that happens, it sounds like you're shooting a 308. And what happens is it usually blows the magazine out the bottom. I don't think it damaged it, but it blew out the bottom. Now, there was this piece of, there's a plate over here that blocks the ejection port, because remember, this gun is reversible. You can have the bullets eject to the left side or the right side. I completely blew that out, okay? And I didn't realize what happened. I managed to get it back together. I think that plate might have been a little bent. I kind of bent it back, got it back together. The gun was working. And at that point, I started questioning the reliability of this, okay? Not knowing exactly what the problem was and why what happened. And then I started looking around, and I found I saw a couple of reviews on Palmetto. I said, let me try these guns out. And that's how I got into these guns. And what I found is that these guns, although they have this inefficiency here of the magazine, you got this extra 6 inches between the grip and the barrel, so there's a loss of spatial efficiency there. The gun was very reliable, and best of all, it would take Glock magazines, which was really convenient, because when I was training people, I could basically start them off on a rifle, teach them how to hit the targets, and then immediately move them to a pistol. So having Glock mags made that transition back and forth. Because before, if I was training people on the Beretta, I would have to say, okay, load 2 magazines for the Beretta, and then load 2 magazines for the Glock. Okay. Whereas now, when I started using the PX9s, I could just throw a bunch of these magazines on the table, say just load them up, and then we'll just we'll use them however we use them. Okay. So that was a big training efficiency, having everything run on Glock magazines. And especially these clear ETS ones, they became a big convenience, because number one, they were cheap. I could get lots of these. I didn't care if they got lost or something, because they were cheap. People could see how many rounds they had in there, because a lot of times I would tell people, okay, put 15 rounds in there, and then I would have a whole bunch of people come running up to me asking me, like when I gave them a magazine like this, everybody would come running up to me to ask me how many rounds they put in the magazine. Okay, whereas with this, it's clear they could count them themselves. So that became a big training efficiency, having these clear ETS magazines. So that's what pushed me solidly into these Palmetto PX-9s. The other thing that was really important is, at the time, in 2020, I found out that Beretta had discontinued selling these. Okay, and now I think that since then they started reselling them. I'm not exactly sure on that, but in 2020 you could not buy these. You could buy these. Okay, so that was another issue, that because here's the thing, it didn't make sense for me to train people on the gun that they couldn't buy. It made a lot more sense for me to train people on the gun that say, do you like the gun? Okay, great. This is where you go and you buy it. So that's another reason why I started using the Palmetto PX-9s. And then what I did is, I bought this is actually I bought one, and then I ended really quickly. I bought 2 and 3 and 4. They just became a very useful training tool. And the things that I taught people on this transferred over to an AR-15, right? So I could train people on this. I could have them shoot steel targets up close, and then I could say, okay, great, now go buy an AR-15 that shoots 5.56, because it's going to be, the operation is going to be like 95% the same. So that's the other reason why I switched over to this. So, I mean, there's a story. Like I said, the purpose, this video is like, I haven't shot this rifle in like 2 years. And I found this rail, and I said, let me put this rail on the gun before I lose it. And that made me want to shoot the gun. And then I thought to do this video and share that experience with you guys. I wanted to basically give you guys my thoughts on, okay, having like moved away from this rifle 2 years ago and now coming back to it, what are my thoughts on it? Well, you guys just heard it. Okay, so thanks for watching. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe. Make sure that you're on my backup channels, because I'm trying to keep dancing around the sensors. So on YouTube, I'm Pocono Shooting, Absolute Gun Rights, and the original Tafa channel, which goes back to 2006. And then on Rumble, I'm Pocono Guns. On BitChute, I'm also Pocono Guns. And on Odyssey, I am Pocono Tactical. Talk to you soon.